Hello, welcome to this demo video. My name is Jamie Oates and I am your host during this demonstration, during which I will be showing you more about Scriptcase. So what is Scriptcase? What's it all about? And how can it help us with our development chores? Scriptcase is a truly efficient, low-code development platform. It not only helps with the creation of complete web systems, but it also includes business intelligence within the applications. Scriptcase does this quite fast while also being very easy to use. Scriptcase is used worldwide for a large and active community of developers, from individuals, small companies, educational institutions, government agencies, to big companies. It is very easy to install and test. You can use it for free for 20 days, test it out, learn more about it, and of course to develop with, including all the technical support you may need to get started. During this demo, I will show you how to create a project, how to quickly develop applications using the available Scriptcase tools and templates. Within the Scriptcase development environment, we can start off by clicking the Create Project button and then choose to create a blank project or use one of the below templates that are available. When creating your project, you can apply a custom icon, a project title or name, as well as a description. Any additional information you can include below and then you just click Next. There are many databases to choose from, including MySQL, DB2, Postgres, Firebird, including cloud databases, Amazon Cloud, and so on. For this demonstration, I will use the MySQL database. When setting up the database, you have many options available. You can choose the driver or specify the IP address, the connection name, and include the username settings for the database connection. Once you have entered your database details, you can then list the database tables. Scriptcase will connect your database. You can then simply select the table or database that you want to connect to. You can test the connection, and before completion, you can also configure various security features as well as filters and advanced aspects of the database connection. And that varies between each database connection that you can connect to. When you're ready, you click Next, and then from there you have language selection. You can also add many languages to your project simply by choosing or adding them here on the creation. You just select them that you want to add and click the Add button. Once you've chosen your languages and included them within your project, you can go ahead and click the Next button. Scriptcase also provides us with many themes that we can choose. We can add multiple themes to our project or just select an individual as the default. So now I'm just going to go ahead and click the Create button and start by creating our project. Once the project has been created, we will be presented with some applications that we can create. Scriptcase provides us many to choose from. The grid, charts, forms, control applications, and so forth. We will have a look at those as we continue on within this demonstration. For now, let's start off with the grid application. You will notice that there are great similarities from application to application during the configuration, as well as when we actually open and manage the applications within Scriptcase. So I'm going to start off here, first of all, by ensuring that we have our correct connection selected. Now we are able to use multiple connections within Scriptcase, and we will have here also a name field. So if I choose here the table sales, and that will then also provide me automatically with a name, as well as all of my fields selected, which I can also modify here if I choose to, and also the SQL select statement here to the right hand side, which I can adjust and also manually edit and change. So do notice at the bottom of this also we have here the button for the SQL Builder, which allows us to open fully customized SQL select statements, which we can really generate super fast and with great ease. But we are going to stay here on the grid application. So below the table selection, we have the localization, and we can also choose here to create the edit form, which will be used for insert as well as edit features, so CRUD capabilities, and that will be generated at the same time with the selected fields that we have here. Okay. We also have the option below that to run the application after creation. To the right here on each of the applications, we will have further options to edit the fields, as well as to specify an alternative theme if we have multiple themes applied within our project. So I will continue and start by clicking here the Create button. Scriptcase will then generate the grid application and go ahead and also generate the source code, run the grid application for us by default because we had checked the checkbox that was available on grid creation. So now with the default grid, layout, we have also some great similarities again between applications. Within each application, we will have here the header as well as a footer, which is by default not displayed. So that you will have to enable within the back end of the application. Within the header of the grid application, we have first of all here the title and to the right, the date. Again, this can be fully customized within the grid application. Below the header, we have the quick search where we can define the columns which we want to search for, as well as the condition that we want to have applied. To the right, we then have further buttons where we can adjust the columns that we want to dynamically have displayed within the grid application. Next to that, we then also have sorting capabilities, so we can provide advanced sorting to the grid application. Export features are also included by default, where we can export to PDF. On selection of the export type, you will be presented with the pop-up window, allowing you to make further adjustments and changes to your export. You can then also choose the columns that you would like to have displayed within the chart, and then you just OK that, and your PDF will be exported. Once the PDF has been generated, you can go ahead and view it, and you will notice within the sidebar that we have all of the pages beautifully listed. We also have tags enabled and much more, which we will see later on. But that's just a very quick export from the PDF application from the grid application that we have just generated here. Next to the export button, we have an advanced search, which we can then use and actually perform advanced search capabilities within the grid application. We also have the option here to save filters. So for instance, I could search here for a specific region, such as the South Atlantic, and choose that. And then here I can also save that filter within the public save filter, and I'll give that a name, my save. I'll choose to save that as public and save, and that will then be available as a public search within the grid application. I just choose that. I can then search, and it will automatically apply my filter to the search that is then applied. We then also have to the right of this advanced search the add new button, which then takes us to the form that was generated. Within the form, we have all of the fields available, which we can also then fully customize and manage within the form application, which we will have a look at shortly. You also have a refresh button and also an exit button, which will close the grid application. To the bottom, you have the footer toolbar, which includes the go to button, how many pages or entries you would like to view. You also have the typical 1, 2, 3 page management toolbar. And to the right of that, we have then also a record count. So now that we've seen the default export of the grid application, let's go ahead and look at the backend application itself. What aspects of it we can configure and change. And the first part of that would be here, the grid modules. Now you will notice here on the left-hand side, we have first of all the expandable menu, which then displays various options that we have to the left here. Now each of those will open and present you many options to configure and set up the grid just how you want them to. Now a lot of them are just very quickly click, and you can apply pretty much anything you want very fast and easily. Here within the initial settings, we start with the initial module. Now that starts here by default with grid. And we can start that with search if we wanted to. So if I go ahead and run the grid application now, you will see that it will start now with the advanced search. So that allows us then to control how we want this grid application to function in the first place. To the right of that, we have the capabilities or features that are available within the grid application. So if I remove here the search and detail, for instance, and I'll have it running on grid, I will run the application, and that will then also remove the detail, which you may have noticed to the right of our data. Okay, and it also removes here the main search. Now the quick search is separate, so that will be removed separately here from the advanced search. Okay, so if I enable those again, you'll see that they then simply return back to the grid application. So there we have our search button, and there we have the detail of our data that is then removed. So very quickly, we can, with a checkbox, remove or add functionalities and capabilities from the grid application. Okay, so next up, one very important feature to enable some of these here. So we have here the summary and chart, which is only enabled once we have here the group by functionality enabled within our grid application. So within the group by, we have a dynamic group by as well as a static group by that we can apply to the grid. Now I will start off here with a static group by. So if I click here, new group by, And Scriptcase automatically asks me there to save what I've just adjusted. And I can apply a name here if I want to. I'm going to leave it blank. It will set itself. And then we can just very quickly drag and drop the datas that we want to have represented within the group by fields, the grid totals, as well as the summary totals. So I'm starting off here with the region field, and I will then also add here the sales date. For the grid totals, I will add sales. And for the summary totals, I will also add sales. Now to the right of each object, we can see that we can actually change various aspects of that. So here for the sales, instead of having sum, I can have an average or a count or a distinct count. And that is just very quickly applied by choosing whatever you want to have applied here. And with the dates, we also then have further options. So here, for instance, I can set year, I can set 2 months, month, week, year, and month, and so forth. So I will leave that as year for the time being, and let's go ahead then and run the grid application and see how that has actually changed our data. So as you see, we start off then here with the region that we have selected, and then also the sales date. And our data is now beautifully grouped within our application, and you may also notice that we now also are provided the summary button. So if I choose to click the summary button, I can then view the summary of our grouped data. Within the summary data, I also then have ability to view the chart that comes then built into the grid application, and that also, as you see, provides click drill down functionality. So we can go back and actually drill down in our data within the chart application. So the alternative group was the dynamic group by. And for the dynamic group by, I just choose here, select fields, and then I drag and drop those fields into the relevant containers again. And you will see that I've gone ahead and drag and dropped various fields into the relevant areas where I want to have them displayed. Now this time around, we have the sales date, year, quarter, and month. And we also have here the record count as count, the sales, first of all, sum, and the next or final sales, we will have this as an average. So one option within the dynamic group by is actually to have them running when we run the grid. So I'm going to deselect these fields, and that way this will not be applied when I run the grid application and will only be presented within a button option. So now within the grid application, we are now presented with the group by button, which is our dynamic group bys. So we can actually set here the static group by or restore that if we have multiple. And here the dynamic group by, we can actually configure this however we want and have our data displayed just as we please. And again, the summary will then represent the data however we want. So now with our group bys applied, I want to actually change how the grid actually starts. So instead of starting with the typical grid application, I actually want it now to start with the summary. So if I choose here as initial module summary and run the grid application, it will now run as the summary whenever the application is started. And now with the summary started, I want to also add here the summary search. So if I open up here the summary panel and come down here to the search option and come into settings, I can view any available settings for the search. I can choose also next up here the fields that I want to have applied. And just as before, I can drag and drop the fields into the next container, and that will then apply them for me. So here I'm going to choose sales date, region, and sales. Now do notice within each field I now also have an edit option, and here I can now change the component and how I want to actually have the data displayed. So here for sales date, I will actually choose the actual period and have multiple values as the option. Here I will then simply choose or indicate year and click OK. And then for the region, let's have a quick look at that. Here at the moment we have a select box. I would rather have a multi-select box, so let's choose that. And we can also adjust the title here to just region, and again choose OK, or we can actually choose here one of the other tabs and we can specify default value and also customize the lookup value, which is not needed in this case. I'm just going to click OK. And then we can have a quick look here at the sales, and there we have a slider. So I'm happy with a slider, so I'm just going to change that here to value and leave the function as sum and click OK. So if I now go ahead and run the grid application again, you'll now see within the summary application that we now have the search applied here, as well as then the year and regions, just how we have defined within the back end of the grid application. Now we can very quickly make some other adjustments here. So if I jump here into the summary settings, we have here the page width. So I'll change that to 100. And here for the width, I want to indicate a percentage value. We can also choose any other options here that we want. And I also want to change here the position of our region data from the y-axis to an x-axis. And if I go ahead and run the grid application again, we're going to see a major flip and change within our data, how it is then also visualized. So that is then our grid application ready to go. And we can then just go ahead and make one final change here. So I'm going to go ahead and jump here into the grid settings here at the top and choose here the vertical alignment to top. Go ahead and run that again, and that should now snugly move the grid application really nicely into the corners of our window. So we can have a quick look at some of the other options that we come across here. So we have, first of all, here within the grid application, all of the export options. And from here we can use APIs. So I can set a custom API, use various email gateways, for instance, configure my own settings, and also change here how that email is then sent to users. That is then also for the export of files. So for instance, if I wanted to export here a PDF, I can change here again the settings for that. So I'll just ignore that, come back here to the PDF. And then from here, for instance, I can apply passwords to that export and change how that is visualized or presented for the end user. And that is available for each of these formats that we have available here: XML, CSV, HTML, and more. So next up would then be the Save Grid button, which we have come across. For the Save Grid, we can actually enable that within the overall grid application and set here the public level. We can specify rules if we wanted to. So if I go ahead and run now the grid application, and now also within the summary, I am now presented with the Save button, just as we were previously within the advanced search. And then from here, I can apply the previous states I had saved. So I can simply apply that, and that would then present that then within the grid application. And with that, we can then also just store and save any configuration or any kind of search for the grid application. So the next application I want to show you is the chart application, and choosing that here. And again, I will choose the sales table, and that will then automatically, as previous with the grid, fill in that data. I can go ahead, click the create, and voila, have a chart application, which I could go ahead and run, but it's going to give me an error because we first of all need to decide the dimensions and metrics that we want to have applied here. So as previous, we are able to drag and drop the data fields that we want to have within the dimensions. So there I will start with region, category, the product, and I will add sales date twice. So sales date, we will have year and say month. And then for the metrics, I will add sales, quantity sold, and cost. So for the quantity sold, I want to change that here to count, and I do not want them all displayed at the same time. So I'm going to remove here category, product, and the final sales date, monthly sales date, and here the quantity sold as well as the cost. If I then go ahead and run the chart application, we will see then the data that we have then displayed within our chart. Very quickly and very easily, we have a great looking chart generated within Scriptcase. So we have sorting functionalities available here by default. We also have the custom box here, which allows us then to change the dimensions and metrics that we have applied within the grid, as we have done here just now. And we have then also some buttons here where we can change the chart, but the chart types here, if I just come here, we can change the type of chart that we want to have displayed. We could quickly do that here with the buttons. I kind of prefer here using the chart type. So we remove here the custom, and we can then also view stacked charts and area charts if they are available, depending on your data and how you have it represented, of course. Now you have then also the summary built in, export features, as well as the reload of the data. So within the chart application, we can manage various aspects. We can change here the sorting of our data. We have the search, which we can then customize fully, as well as chart settings, where we can change here the chart that we want to have displayed in the first place. So I can start off with the 2D pie, for instance, and that will then present my data as the 2D pie to begin with. And that can be then fully customized here within the chart tab. And we can change here the width of the chart, any values, and so forth. On the left-hand side here, we have then the theme options, which we can then preview for a relevant theme. So ideally here, we would choose the theme that we are using. So we are using here the 2D pie. And then we can then customize that according to a theme that we have available here, as well as apply your own customizations within all of the options that we have then available for the styling of your data. So I will quickly apply the inherit from the application theme so that it actually matches the overall project. And then next up we have then also various settings here, the toolbar which we can drag and drop the various elements that we want to have displayed within the application, as well as the export features we had seen a few moments ago, and many other options. We will have a look at some of these as we continue on within the next application, which will be the form application. So let's go ahead and have a quick look at that. If I come here to new application and choose here form, again I choose the table that I want to have applied, and this time I will choose the table customers. And now with the form application, you may notice here the tabs that we have here. So immediately I can choose if I want to have a single row application, a multiple row application, an editable grid, or an editable grid view, which we will have a look at in a few moments. So once the form application has been generated, we can have a quick look at the default aspects of it and see how it then comes within Scriptcase. And we can then quickly dive into the data types, which I had mentioned earlier, which are then also the field values that we have here. So by default, the form application includes as the grid, the header that we have here at the top with the title and the date, and then the toolbar below that, where again we have the quick search. We have an add new button where we can then add new content to our data. We have then also the save button, which will then update the current data. We have a delete button, which will of course delete everything, a reload button, and also an exit button. To the bottom of the form, we have the go to, the typical navigation options, as well as then the total count. So for the field types, we'll have a look at these as we then develop the form further. So if I jump straight into here to the form, let's have a quick look at each of the options here first of all. So we have the form orientation. So we've just seen there the single record. We have multiple records. So for multiple records, you see here the demonstration of how that looks, as well as the pagination options that you can apply, how many records to insert, if the labels are fixed, and more. So if I go ahead and run that really quickly, you can see how the multiple records looks. And then with the multiple records, you see that we have all of the fields open, and then we can just really quickly adjust whatever we like. And then if we scroll all the way over, we then need to update those as we go along and save them as we go along. It's not the same as, of course, the editable grid, which then provides the edit buttons and so forth to the right. So if I open that up, we can then see here we now have the edit save buttons here to the left instead of up here at the top. And that is then a little easier to use, but at the same time presents a similar view to the multiple records. Now the editable grid view, that gives us a completely different view again. Yes, multiple records, but this time everything is closed up, and we actually need to click here the edit button to edit or change the data that we have there. Now that does also provide the option to open that edit as a modal window, so I can quickly run that. And then within the edit, when we choose here edit this time, it will actually open it as a modal window instead of within the grid edit that we just had there. Okay, so Scriptcase does provide us many features and capabilities to customize our form. So I'm going to select here the single record and save that. And if I come down here to the edit fields option, we can then view all of our fields that we have available. Now we have a very easy drag and drop capability here that we can just simply slide or drag and drop the fields that we want to have displayed. We also have an edit icon there. By clicking that, it will take me directly here to the fields folder and the relevant field. And within the edit fields, we can also change whether that is displayed on the new update form, as well as if it is read only, required, and so forth. We can even define here our own values for the insert as well as the update of our data. So at the bottom of that, we can change here how the messages are displayed. And of course, to the left, again, we can apply many other features and capabilities or functionalities within the form. So we're going to have a look at a load of those within the next few moments. So let's start off here by first of all adjusting here the layout of our fields. I'm just going to quickly drag and drop some of these where I want them. So there I'm going to have the photo at the top, customer ID, customer name, document, and we can leave the majority of those. Now the credit card types, I want these down the bottom here. So I want there first of all the rating, and now there's one field I do not want, and that is then the city ID. So that's not needed at all, and we see here page fields not shown, so that is now below that, and that field will not be shown now. So then at the bottom here I want first of all the signature, then we want to have notes, the rating, I want to drag that up the top here because we want that here with the customer. So I'm going to place that there with the phone number, and then we can just very simply save that. And if we run the form application again, we can see that all of those fields are now adjusted into the positions where we want them. Okay, to further customize that, we can then return to the form and come here to the layout and blocks. Now, pages is another option that just provides us tabs, but blocks then allows us then to customize the layout of the actual page. So here I'm in page 1, and if I come here to pages, we will see that we have page 1. So if we add multiple pages here, we will then see those multiple pages here within the block creator. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and click create a new block, and I will start by creating names or giving names to these blocks. Like the first one I'll call photo, and I'll adjust that one to the top. This one here, I'll change that to info. I don't need to change the name or the label here on the side. And then to the right of each of these blocks, I can then make further adjustments. So here, for instance, I can define whether the title will be displayed, if the label of the field is displayed, where the label is displayed, so beside, above, or below. We can define columns for each of these blocks. So then elements will be beside each other, for instance, and that is exactly what we define here in the next field, whether they will be below, beside, or in a line. We'll also then have what happens with the next block, so the one below. We can define the width, and also if it is basically open or closed, or if it allows that feature or functionality in the first place. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly add some further blocks. Okay, so I've very quickly gone and applied all those blocks, and then I can just very quickly also jump in here and apply some various different settings that we want to have applied, or how we want them to be displayed within the form application. So again, I'm just coming in here and I'm changing here, adding columns and so forth into each of these, how I want them displayed. So here the next one here would be tabs, for instance, and then I can very quickly apply that to each of these that I want to have them displayed in certain ways. So if I go ahead now and save that, and then within the edit fields, I can very quickly drag and drop those fields into position. Alternative to that, I can also use here the fields positioning to the left-hand side. And then from there, I can just simply select those fields that I want. And I can then just move them around into their relevant positions. I can then quickly save that and then run the form application. And you'll see that now everything is presented where we want to have it basically presented. So we have here now multiple tabs and the information here displayed in columns and so forth. So I do need to make some further adjustments here. So I need to come back here to the blocks option. And then from here, we can then very quickly change how they are then displayed a bit again. So beside was then the first one. Up here beside, tabs, 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 below, below. And again, just very quickly, if I run that, and then just like that, we have our layouts pretty much how we want it. We need to make adjustments now to all of the field types. So coming back here into Scriptcase, we can then come here to the individual fields and make adjustments to those. So for instance here, the rating field, if I choose that, at the moment, the data type is set as an integer. Now Scriptcase jumps into the database, checks the data type that we define, and then it basically guesses them. So if, in this case, we want to change here the data type to rating, and that will then present us with different values and options for that relevant data type. So if I go ahead and save that and run that now, we can then see that we now have a star rating for that application. So there in the credit, we have that a rating. So that's not in the correct field, and we need to adjust that also. So I'll jump very quickly into edit fields and then place rating into the correct field. And there we go. It will then be displayed here on the actual form, and we can see here now as the rating is 3 or 5 stars, however we want it, and we can adjust that then very easily within the application itself by choosing here how many stars you want to have applied or any values and so forth. So I'll very quickly go ahead and make adjustments to all of the final fields, and I think what we can actually very quickly do is also change here the master detail, which is one of the most complex things we can actually do on the form. So let's come here and create a master detail for this application. And before I do that, I will actually need to create a new form. So if I come here to new application, and I will generate a very quick new form, which I'll choose here the orders table, orders, and then create that. And then that will be ready for me to use here now as a master detail within the form customers. So that's generating that now, and we're going to see that. There we go. There's our orders form. And so we just jump back here into Scriptcase, come back here to the form orders, come here to a new master detail. Now we have the option of creating a new block here. Now we do not want that. I already have created the block for this. And I'm just going to give it the name orders and the label it will generate. So I'll click create. And then from there, we simply choose the form that we want to have added. We can then specify the relevant ID. So here we have the customer ID and custom ID as the key for the alternative or the detail form. And then once that's configured, we have further options of defining further parameters if we so wish. In this case, we don't have any. We're just going to confirm that. And then we can specify on the final step whether we want to have the insert, update, delete buttons enabled, if we want the navigation, or if we want a where clause. The features are endless. So below that, we have here the detail property. So we can choose here what kind of grid we want to have enabled. So I've got here enabled the editable grid view, and we can choose here also if dependencies and so forth are enabled. Now they are all available here within the form application. To the left here, you may already be seeing some of these. Now there are some amazing functionalities and features that you are actually able to add here with some very easy clicks left and right. Okay, so we have now at the bottom here our form, and we see that is then our form that is being displayed here. Now we do want to change how that looks, so we will need to change that. So at the moment here, the form type is editable grid view, and here I'm going to change that to an editable grid view, save that. I will also generate that, and just like that, that form will now be generated and will then updated within the application just with a refresh, and then we have that then displayed there. Okay, so very final quick changes to our customer form, and then we're going to see what this looks like at the end. Okay, so now that all of the fields have been set, and we can see here, for instance, in this field, we have the region field. It is a select field. And in this case, we just very quickly and easily apply here the automatic lookup select for our table, which we can then apply very easily with a few ticks and clicks of the mouse. We just save that. We indicate whether we want a title displayed or not. We can choose the connection also just to provide that extra stability. And then from there, if we go ahead and run the form application now, and then with the form running, we can see that everything is now nicely positioned. We have all of our field values defined here. We have drop-down menus as well as date fields, all defined and very easily added. We have here the credit type for various field types, a comment, a HTML editor, as well as then a signature field, allowing us to add signature capabilities to our applications. Now, one feature we do have here within this form is here the credit capability, and we really want to basically disallow a very high credit limit. So one of the capabilities within Scriptcase is the possibility to play with the events. And the events are super powerful because within the events, we can basically target a specific session or part of the entire process when the form loads, when it enters information, when it updates, whatever it does. So we can basically, at each of these individual points, we can specify that something should happen. So for instance, we have here the on before insert. And what I want to do now is add here a method called credit limit. And this is how we add a method within here. And I can just save that, and you'll see here that the icon here will change to yellow. And I also want to apply that on before update. So I'm going to add that there. Okay, so we'll see the method in a moment, but before we get there, let's have a quick look here to the right-hand side of this entry. So you see this is a typical editor here that we can use, okay? And to the right here, we have many examples, macros. You can even store your own code snippets. If you are a coder, then you will have some great fun with this. If not, then you will be able to learn a great deal from this. And at the same time, it is very important for me to say that, or mention that the macros here are very powerful and adds so many more functionalities and capabilities within the application. For instance, you can send mails via APIs, via WhatsApp, encode data or decode data, and whatever you like. You have many macros there that will save you hours of time, hours of development time. Okay, so with our method in place, we actually now need to create it. Otherwise, if we run the grid application, it will actually generate an error message. So here down in the left-hand menu, we have the programming option. And if I come here to new method, I can then specify a method name. So I'll call that here credit limit. I will create that. And then I'll just paste in my piece of code that I have here, which is if the credit limit is over 10,000, then we will display an error message that it's over the limit. So if I go ahead and run the form application now, we can then see here within the form, if I come here to credit limit, and if I go ahead and save that, it will now actually give me an error message saying that this value that is stored there is over the specified limit. So now that we have a few applications that we've created, we can actually see within Scriptcase how the development environment works. And we can see here, first of all, our applications that we've created or generated so far. We have here the chart sales, and we can see here on the right-hand side that it has not been regenerated since the last update. We can add here friendly URL, if we please, as well as a description for the application, which can be stored here and viewed at any time, which is also added into the security backend if saved previously. So you have various functionalities here where we can run the application, we can edit the application, we can copy it, as well as rename it. To the bottom of this, once we've chosen a few applications, we can also choose various options here to edit, generate, deploy, delete, copy, as well as move the applications from folder to folder. So we do have folder creation here also, which allows us then to really, manage our applications much easier. Okay, so then the next application I actually want to show you is then the dashboard application. So if I come here to new application and then I choose here the dashboard application, and there's nothing spectacular about this one, so I'm just going to go ahead and click create, and then within the dashboard we can then basically add link widgets or index widgets into this and then just represent or display our data however we like. And you can see here I can move around this element or this object within this container, and then basically if I add another one, for instance, I'll just add another blank one, and then that I can place in here and also then adjust the positioning of that however I please. Okay, so we have two types of widgets. As I had mentioned, we have the link widget and an index widget. So the link widget, which is what we have here two of already, we are able to define here applications that we want to have displayed. So here, for instance, I will display the grid sales. We can then change the toolbar options for this dashboard, as well as the properties, and also adjust the title if it is displayed, because we can also change that here. Now I will just go ahead and save that as it is. And then below that we have the alternative. So if I now go ahead and add the index widget, you'll see that the options are very different. Now the index widget actually allows me to connect here to the database, and that will then display or represent data however I need for the end user. So in here we can just simply choose the table. For instance, if I choose here the sales table, and I can choose the metric field, so I'll go region, and then we can go the period field, which is the sales date. And then we can also apply the metric function, so I'll go count, and also the period function. So I go monthly here, for instance, we can display the percentage difference, the difference, or the value. So I'll leave that as it is, save that, and again I'll adjust that over here to the right hand side, make it a little smaller so it fits nicely, and basically place that in there. So if I now go ahead and run the dashboard application, we will now see that we have here the grid that I have applied, as well as an index widget. Okay, if we go back then to the dashboard application, you notice that I've already gone ahead and made some changes here. So I've added another index widget, as well as adjusted the grid sales to the bottom and displaying at the top here the chart sales. So if I go ahead and run that now, we will see the new layout that we then have applied within the dashboard. So we have here then the chart that we had created, two index widgets, as well as the sales chart we had previously created. The next application I'm creating is the calendar application. With the calendar application, we can either choose a table that we already have pre-prepared, or we can create a table that will present the data that we have for our events. So choosing to create a table, it will generate all of the required fields within our database for us. Now, then editing or managing that table later, that is of course an option. So we can make adjustments to these fields as well as the data that we have represented for the calendar application directly on creation. If I go ahead and click the create button, it will then generate the calendar, and we will see that the default calendar is actually quite advanced and provides all of the options which we may already need to use this application. So we start off on the left hand side here with the available categories, so we can apply categories to what we insert. We have here the typical navigation on the monthly basis. We can go back to today. We can also print our data or our events. And then we have our month and year. And then to the right here, we can actually specify whether we want to have month view, a week view, a day view, or the schedule view, which will then present us all of our events that we have available. And then if we click on one of these fields, we can then have the form or the calendar form available for us, and then add our new events in here. And then we can just simply add our event data, choose family event or whichever, if it reoccurs, the start date, the end date, as well as the time, and even indicate whether this is a full day event. If I just click add, it will then add that event with the indicated color code that I have selected to the calendar application. So if I go ahead and add a couple here, and we can see now that we have multiple events displayed within the calendar application. Okay, so if I come back into the calendar application, so we can disable the drag and drop capability. So within the events, I can actually drag and drop the events from one day to another, which is a really nice feature. And of course, that is something I can also disable within the back end. We can also disable the option for full day, as well as enable the display of the mini calendar. So choosing that and running the calendar application again will now display the mini calendar up here to the left-hand side, which we can then also use to track and view our event data. Once you've configured your calendar how you please, then you may also want to adjust here the fields. So here we have the calendar fields, and by default the description is not enabled, so I will enable that and define here the description field. And if I go ahead and run the calendar again, you will now see with each of these events that the description is now also displayed where available. Now back within the calendar application, it's important to note that we can also link this with the Google API. So just by checking this box here and adding your authorization code, you will be able to connect your calendar with Google and synchronize your events from one application to the other. Now the next application I want to show you is the blank application, which is possibly one of the most powerful application within the arsenal. So I select here or indicate a name for this application and click create. Now notice that there was nothing else to select from, as it just simply allows us to connect to the database if we need to. Otherwise, as you see, it provides us just an edit area. So within this application, for instance, I can create anything I want. I can paste in here a ton of HTML code, and with that, as you will see, I will be able to create or display a HTML page. So within this application, I can actually create my own forms, my own applications, however, whatever I like, and still use all of the functionality and capability of the examples that we have available here, including the macros and also your code snippets. Now within the editor, we can also change here the theme of how we want the editor to be displayed, so we can view our code how we please, as well as other functionalities such as the increase of the editor. We can have search capabilities, full screen, a refresh or replace functionality, and also a help. Clicking the help will open the Scriptcase help page where you will be able to view the documentation available to you. So the final application I want to show you today is the menu application. So I come here to new application and choose the menu application. I will generate a menu. Now before I do that, do notice that we also have here the tree menu, which will generate a completely different menu style. Now the typical menu comes in horizontal and vertical fashions. So if I select that and click create, Scriptcase will generate the menu for me and present me with the following options. So here straight away I can import or add individual items. So I can add individual items, I can choose them, I can delete them. I can also import directly any applications I've previously created. So in this case, I'm going to choose all of my applications and import them. I will save the menu application, and then from here, I can go ahead and make adjustments to the menu items. So here, for instance, for the good sales, I can choose here the icon positioning. If there is an image or a font awesome icon, so in this case, I will apply font awesome icon, and then here I will choose, say, a money icon. And that will then go for sales. I can then also choose the target of the window as well as the color of the icon. So if I want to change the color of that, I can change the color of the icon, including the hover color of the icon. So then now that will change depending on hover, and also the disabled color for this icon. I can apply hints to this menu item as well if I want, and then that will then also be displayed within the menu on hover. So if I go ahead and run that now, we can have a quick look at what that looks like with these default values that we have applied here. And if I hover over that now, you see I have the hint applied as well as the field exactly how I had applied it. So then back into the menu settings to the right here, we can actually make further adjustments to the theme of this. So if I choose here the Gleam Dark Blue, and that will then apply a completely different theme to this menu that we have here. So before I continue and make some further adjustments to these menu items, I will go ahead and save that and check out here the toolbar, which is a great functionality or feature as well. So here I can actually add buttons below that. And if I wanted to, I can actually have buttons then displayed below the menu item. And that is then something that we can add to that if we wanted to. So there we see the new theme, and these are 3 buttons that I've just applied. I'm not going to keep them, but that just shows you that we can add further features to this menu if we wanted to. Okay, so back with the menu again, you can see that I've gone ahead and made some changes to each of the elements. We now have icons displayed on each of them, and that is then usable within our project. So if I now go ahead and run that, we can then see what it looks like, and we can see now that we have each of our applications here, and we do have one missing here, so that's not a problem. But then otherwise, all of our applications are displayed here. Now we do have the option here of displaying elements in tabs or individual items, and that is something we can change here directly within the settings if that's something we wanted to do. Now you may also notice that I've defined here an individual application, so there should be dashboard, and that will then be used as the startup application. And just above that, we can make various changes to how the icons are displayed, if there is a breadcrumb navigation, and so much more. So do have a quick look at, or do delve into the settings, because you will find many options available to you which you can really highlight or change the functionality and features of each of the applications within Scriptcase. Okay, so now that we have created all of our applications, I will go ahead and close this one. We can save any changes we have made to that. And now we want to actually create the security for all of our applications so that we have everything bundled together and a really nice login page going together with that. So I will start by clicking up here the modules option and then choose security. And that will then open the security selection or creation interface for us. Now here we can choose to use a user security platform, an application security platform, a group security platform, or an LDAP security platform. So for this demonstration, I will choose group and click next. And then we can choose our connection, which is then very quick and easy. Now, if we do not have the tables required for the security, Scriptcase will generate those for us. We can also choose to delete any existing tables we may have that will provide any conflicts. And we can then choose also if we want to protect our logged in users or use social networks such as Google or Facebook to log in with. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and create the tables and click next. Now, once the tables have been generated, you will receive here the messages saying yes, okay, all done. And then we will see all of the fields and their designations here that have been applied to each of the applications that will be generated. So if I go ahead and click next again, we can then start to define or indicate all of the settings that we want to have applied for our security. So we have here, first of all, the prefix that we want to have applied for our applications. We can then choose to do whatever we want after the session expires. So if we want to redirect the user, if we don't want to do nothing at all, or if we want to display a message and then redirect them. So I just redirect them in this case. And for the encryption, we have multiple available, MD5, SHA-256, 512. So I choose 512. And then below that, we have many other options available if we want capture displayed, how we want the login positions, if we want to remember the login, and more. So at the bottom here, we already have a menu created. So I do not want to create a new menu. So I will choose the menu I'm currently using, and then I will check out some of the other fields here. So for the login field, we can specify the length of our username and password, as well as here the option to view the password characters. We have the option to retrieve the password or how we want that to occur. For new users, we can define if we allow them and if they require activation, as well as notification to the admin. And we can also specify here the group that we want to have defined for initial users. We have then email settings that we can apply, so the platform emails us and so forth, and then also the login template. So at the moment we don't have any applied. We do need to use external libraries for that. So I'm going to go ahead and click here, enable external libraries, and that will now open up here the samples library. And now you see here we have here samples. Now I've already got one attached here. So typically what you do is you go save as, choose here the library where you want it applied, public or project. So in this case, I've gone ahead and chosen project. I've left the name as it is and then click save as. And that has now added it here to my project, and then have the option here to use the library, which I've also clicked. So if I untick that or uncheck that, I now have the option to use the library, which I need to select and then save the project libraries. Okay, so that will represent data saved successfully, meaning that all my files are now stored within the project and available. So if I close that back up again and come here to the security again, I can now choose reload and then choose yes. And now all of the samples that are available, or the external libraries that are available, will become available within the drop-down menu. So here I can then choose the login, say 03, and go next. And that would now use the template I've previously created or defined. Now, next up we have here the option to choose the username and password of the administrator, as well as the admin details. I'm going to leave that as default for now. Click next, and then go ahead and check the option to generate the security, as well as secure all of the applications. And once that's done, we will then receive the notification. We can now open the project or generate the source code. So if I generate the source code, it will generate all of my applications. And then once generated, we can choose to run the application, and it will start with the login page. So if I now come here and log in with admin as I had defined and sign in, that will now take me to the menu with all of the applications I have now created. Once logged in, you can see then that the menu is fully created with the security features that we need here for the administration. Now, one modification you may want to make to this is actually hide the security when it is not an admin user. So if we come back here into the menu application, come here to the events, and then on application in it, we can actually hide the menu from here. So the first thing we need to do is come here to the menu and right click on the security and use the browse inspect feature, and we can see here that the item number is item 9, so ID item 9. So if I then go ahead and close that, and here within the events I can then use a basic PHP value. So if user login equals admin, so it's if not equals admin, then we use the sc menu delete macro and delete the item 9. So to check out the macros, do view here to the right hand side. You have the question mark there you can click on, and it will present you all of the information that you need to use the macro, and they are super powerful and great to use within your application, so do check them out. Okay, so now that's done, the menu option will then be hidden from the end user if not logged in as admin. So let's go ahead now and deploy our project. So if I come here now to project and then choose here to deploy, we can then choose to deploy all applications or select applications. So as this is a first initial deployment, I would choose all applications. And Scriptcase tells me straight away, oh, some applications are outdated. Maybe you want to generate them first. So I do that, I then close that, and then click next again. So I can choose a typical or advanced deployment. I'm going to stick with a typical, and I do have a Windows operating system, and I love to publish with Fusion maps all the time, even if I don't use them. It's just how it is. Okay, and then for the initial application, we want to start with the app login. So I'll choose that there, and then I will go next. Okay, so for the deployment, we can choose if we want to export to a zip file, which will then compress all applications into a zip file, which we can then upload individually or store or whatever, as well as then the tar.gz. So that's very similar to the zip file. We have then also the option to deploy directly to the server directory, so locally, and also directly to an FTP server or an SFTP server. So I choose here deploy on FTP, and then I'll fill in my details, and then with my FTP server entered, the username as well as the password and the folder location, I can click next, and Scriptcase will start the deployment to the designated location on my FTP server. And then once the applications have all been deployed to the indicated server, you will receive the indication that you can download the applications as a zip file also, and that all applications have been successfully sent to the FTP server. Your project is then ready to start and good to go. So thank you very much for watching this demonstration. I hope that you have enjoyed it and learned a great deal about Scriptcase.